Thanks, Sarah, and good afternoon, good evening to everybody. My name is Paul Madden. I graduated from Western in 1982. With a lot of you in the room, that was probably before you started school, but it was a while ago, and I'm very happy to be here. You know, building a career, I'm proud to say that I have been fortunate enough to have a great career, mostly at 3M Company. And building a career, I really believe, is a personal thing. What I think is going to be a great career is not necessarily the same career as a lot of my friends. I recently I moved around as a child, and that'll be a theme in my career. My father was a United Church minister, and he got a new church every 3 or 4 years. And so consequently, as we moved as families. And so that meant the difficult task of picking up and moving on and leaving friends and making new friends. And I've kind of kept that bug in me, and that's kind of what has made my career what I think is a satisfying career. But I recently stopped in at one of our stays was in Lucan, Ontario, just north of the city, and I stopped in to see a friend of mine who was my high school buddy. We were the closest friends. Rick is the parts manager at the Kenworth truck depot up here, and he has loved his career. He's been there for over 30 years. He checks out at night. He goes home. He's got 2 kids. They've done really, really well. I was at the dentist this morning with a fellow that I went to Western with his wife, and he's been in London his entire time, and he's a dentist in North London. And so it's really a personal thing on what, in my view, on what you want to do and how you make your career. The hardest thing is to try to figure out what you're going to like, and so that's the journey that we're on. I'm married 25 years in October and have 3 boys who are 16, 19, and 21. My 19-year-old starts at Western in the fall, so we're continuing lives. My wife went to Mac, and so there was a lot of problems at home, but we got them straightened out and going in the right direction. So I graduated in 82, and there weren't a lot of jobs back in 1982, not unlike some of the history that we've been challenged with recently. So I actually went to Banff for a year and skied 8 hours a day, 6 days a week at Sunshine Village. Made $5.75 an hour, and after 1 year, I felt that I wasn't being challenged enough, and I had to go back join the real world again, and have been questioning that decision ever since. But that's going to be a theme kind of in my career is when I get to a point where I don't think I'm being challenged enough, I look on and get itchy feet and move on to different things. I spent 5 years with a small company in Toronto. So I came back to Toronto, spent 5 years with a food service equipment company and learned the art of sales, which is how I started my career with 3M. So after 5 years in the small company, and in a small company you learn a lot. You do a lot of different jobs, you wear a lot of different hats, you watch your costs like crazy. And that, I think, was that was a really good learning for me to how to manage my business moving forward. So I started with 3M in 1988 in Toronto, and I spent 2.5 years in sales, continued on that path, and was fortunate enough to get transferred to London in a marketing role. And I spent about 5 years in London in marketing in our abrasives business, and in a couple of different roles, and I really thought that I could do a little bit more. And so at that point, I moved to Calgary in a sales management role, and was there for 2.5 years. And when we moved, I said I had 3 boys. Our second child was born just before that move, and from that point on, my wife gave up her career and stayed home for 19 years now. My son just turned 19. And so in my view, part of managing a career that you love is making sure that the people around you are also loving what you're doing and loving what's going on. I have a very supportive family, a very supportive wife, and to me that was critical because we all spend a lot of time at work, but when you come home, it has to be a happy home, and I've been fortunate to do that. So after two years in Calgary as a sales manager, I got moved back to London. My wife actually cried leave Calgary because we did love Calgary. It's a really beautiful city. But I moved back here into we have in 3M, we have 30 different businesses under the 3M umbrella, and I managed one of the businesses, the electrical business. And from that, 3M is headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota, but one of the businesses is headquartered in Austin, Texas, and that was the business I was in. And so I was given the opportunity after 2 years in the role in Canada to join the electrical business in Austin, Texas. And so I went down to Austin. I talked to the management team down there about what the role was, and I started to get cold feet. And I said I was never going to sell out and move to the US because I'm a very proud Canadian, and that's exactly what I did. But I came back from the first trip, and I said to my wife, Jackie, I said, you know what? They're not paying me enough money. I'm really not sure about this role. We like it here in London. All our family's here. Let's not do this. And she said to me, she said, come on, let's give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? You can fall flat on your face. We'll move back to Canada. Because I was set not to come. And without that encouragement, I would have not have accepted that role. So to this date, I always credit my wife, Jackie, for pushing me along there. So again, supportive at home, but also willing to take a little bit of risk. Because that was pretty risky. I had, at that point, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Moving to Austin, Texas, which I thought everybody packed a gun, and there's a lot of rednecks down there and all that type of thing. When in fact, Austin, Texas is an absolutely great place to live. It's a very vibrant city. It's very modern. It's very liberal. There's not a lot of cowboy hats and rednecks, and I encourage anyone to go to Austin, Texas. So we were in Austin, Texas for 7 years, and that's kind of where our children grew up, and where a lot of my children would, the kids that I know of, would call home and my wife was a stay-at-home mom, and she has a lot of friends there. I had 3 or 4 different roles in the 7 years I was there, but again, was getting to the point where I was feeling itchy feet, and I was feeling I wasn't challenged. And then I was fortunate enough to get offered one of the second best job at 3M, third best job at 3M, and that's to run 3M for Australia. And so at that point, my children were, I think, 9, 12, and 14. And we upped and often went to Sydney, Australia, and spent 4 years in Sydney, Australia. So I really had my eye on this role. One of the things that I think is important to talk about your employer, to talk about your management about what you're really interested in doing. And that was, I think that's one of the keys that I always did, is to make sure that around review time that people know what you want, have a clear path of what you want to do, and help you how to get there. So we spent 4 years in Sydney, Australia. It was an absolutely spectacular 4 years. We were talking about Australia a little bit before the session. I think it's the Commonwealth connection with Canada, that there's a real connection with Aussies. Aussies are really out there and are pretty crazy, and that kind of aligns a little bit with what we are here in Canada. So we had a fantastic time. Partway through that time, my 14-year-old wanted to really play hockey and wanted to move back to Canada. And so he moved. We're in Sydney, Australia. My son was going to school at a school called in Wilcox, Saskatchewan, called Notre Dame. Some of you may know that school. And he spent 4 years in there. So that was quite a challenge and quite a thing to do while continuing my career in Austin, Texas, while my 14-year-old son is in Saskatchewan. I had some pretty strict rules for him that whenever his mother wanted to talk to him on Skype, he had to at least do it 3 times a week, and I only had to remind him twice, so that was pretty good. And he had a fantastic experience at Notre Dame for the 4 years he was there. So 4 years is up, and we have to come back, and we're not sure where we're going back, but we end up back in Austin, Texas again. And I was in a role that I really wasn't very happy about. It was a startup role. But it was back in North America, back in Austin, our second home, I would call it. And I think also when you're in a role like that, you have to have the patience and understanding and hope that the company has another idea for you, another path for you. I've seen people get really frustrated with positions that they're in and give up and take off. And I've been at 3M for 27 years, and I know the new demographic, it's going to be a little bit different than that, or you're told that it's going to be different than that. Come and talk to me about 3M. This isn't a 3M commercial, but we have 30 businesses, and we can offer lots of different experiences while staying under the 3M umbrella. So we go back to Austin, Texas. I'm in this role. We built a new house. It took 6 months to build the house. We move in December, and then the next July, 6 months later, I get called to come home to Canada to run Canada. So that was another sell job for my wife, because she was very happy to be back in Austin. But we're delighted to be back. It's been a great adventure, and so for a Canadian to come back to 3M Canada to lead Canada, it's typically an American that stays in this role. And so we were very honored and delighted, and we couldn't be happier to be back in Canada. So really, in summary, I think for a career that you love, it means, as I said, a lot of different things to different people. I think you really have to let people know what you're interested in doing and talk to them about it. When I moved from my degree from Western was in economics. When I moved from sales to marketing, I had very little marketing training. So I talked to the head of marketing at the time, and I said, what do I need to do to convince you to get me into marketing? And he said, take a marketing course. So I took a marketing course at Laurier, and I got a job 4 months later. So talk about what you need. I talked about the support from your family. In my view, in my life, there's 5 the most important things. So it's my wife, my 3 kids, and then 3M. And so it's kind of in that order, because it's just really, really not worth it if you don't have support and from home. Career paths are not a guarantee. There's a lot of risk involved, and I think you have to be willing to kind of step out on the edge there and take a little bit of risk. I know I certainly did, and that risk certainly paid off for me. Don't be too impatient if you get into a role that's not just the right role. I've seen a lot of people at 3M get distracted thinking about that next job and worrying too much about that next job, and then not doing a good enough job in the current role that you're at. And so do a really good job and prepare yourself for that next role. The other thing is it's really important to not take yourself too seriously at work. Some people can get really hyped up about it. I know I'm the head of 3M at work, but when I go home, it's a whole different story, let me tell you. I get brought right back down to earth, and I get reminded a couple of times that I'm not the president at home, I'm the president at work. So don't take yourself too seriously. And then really the last thing is, how do you find a career that you love? You really have to make time to enjoy your job and enjoy your time at work, because life's too short to get stressed. You got to find some good. We've just in the last 7 months at 3M, we haven't had a terribly fun time in Canada. We just changed our ERP system, and we went to SAP, and it really didn't work out very well. So it hasn't been a lot of fun in the last 7 months, but it's going to be a lot more fun in the next 7 months, because we're almost to the end and we almost got it fixed. So just my last comment is, I talked about, I got the third best job is Australia, the second best job is running Canada. The best job at 3M is filled by a Canadian, and his name is Jerry Maybury. Does anybody know Jerry by any chance? Jerry knows everybody. He's originally from London. Jerry's 70 years old, and for the last 25 years, Jerry has been managing our golf sponsorships. So he's in Austin, Texas. He's in St. Paul, although he spends most of his time in his home in Florida, so I'm not sure how that works. We have the 3M Championship, the senior event in Austin. We have a big deal at the Masters. We've got a big deal at AT&T. And he's 70 years old and he's still working, so he has the best career and the funnest job in the world. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and we'll talk to you later.